I'm just saying I'm not finished yet. Search for it, swing for it, discover the me that lives in yes. Stand for it, stretch for it. It's my time, imagine my best. Run for it, reach for it, uncover the me that lives in yes. I know, yes I know, there'll be miracles wherever I go. It's not work, it's play. I can make magic today.
Hi everyone, welcome to Senior Nation. I'm your host, Phylis Ayman, and you are listening to the Source TV Radio Network, WTSN, Washington, D.C. We are indeed a senior nation with 100 plus million adults over the age of 50. And we are here to bring you up-to-date information about successful aging, healthful longevity, and what I call becoming a well-ager to dignity, respect, quality of life, and quality of care for our parents, our grandparents, and loved ones. We at Senior Nation will be your trusted voice for informed choices, meaningful conversations, and a vibrant life at every age. Though the Source TV Radio Network is known for its dedication to bringing the highest level of jazz content to the viewing and listening audience, the owners of the network are also dedicated to bringing this important content to this fast-growing demographic, and I'm always grateful for the opportunity. And now for tonight's guest, Beth Pinsker, also has a perspective on caregiving after her experience caring for her mother. However, with a strong background as a journalist and financial planner, she turned her sights to the financial aspects of caregiving. Beth spent the first part of her career as a film critic and entertainment business reporter, writing for many publications such as Entertainment Weekly, the Dallas Morning News, the Independent Film and Video Monthly, Variety, and the New York Times. She had brief stints at Who Wants to Be a Millionaire and was an intern for Late Night with David Letterman. Beth won an SABEW, Society for Advancing Business Editing and Writing, Best in Business Award in 2023 for a commentary for a series of columns about caring for her mother. She's turned those into a book, My Mother's Money, a guide to financial caregiving, with that has been published this month, November 2025. So I'm thrilled to have Beth here with me this evening.
Hi, everybody. Nice to be here.
Hi, Beth. So glad that you could join me and we can have this conversation. You know, as I mentioned before we got on last week, I had my guest, she had written a book, The Self-Esteem Regime, but she really also had been caring for her mother for quite some time. And so that was, you know, she talked about that, what that experience was, but your experience caring for your mother, while the caregiving part of it is the same, the financial aspect that we're going to be delving into is certainly something that people don't really talk about or consider. We talked about that a little bit before the show. So tell me a little bit about the caregiving experience and then how that led you to this financial aspect of caregiving, which is so important.
So financial caregiving is when you have to step in and take care of all the financial aspects of somebody else's life because they're ill in some way, or you have to settle their estate after they die. And a lot of people think about caregiving just in the context of hands-on medical caregiving. You know, you have to arrange dad's pills for him, or you have to help somebody shower or, you know, feed them in some capacity. But, you know, the financial part is actually the stuff that takes up a lot of time and energy. It's just not hands-on in the same way. When I was my mom's caretaker, we had women that we hired to do the physical part of it. You know, the everyday part of it, you know, changing the sheets and doing the laundry and helping her in the bathroom, because she didn't want us to do those more intimate tasks for her. It was really painful to her to have to ask us to do anything, me and my brother, especially my brother, for the more intimate tasks. But she didn't want me wiping her bottom
Right.
either.
Right.
And I did it when I had to, but I didn't like it, I didn't like it so much either. But those are tasks that, in a hospital setting or in a facility setting, those aren't usually tasks that you have to do yourself as a caregiver. But there was no way in the universe that my mother, who didn't even trust online banking,
Right.
would have given her ATM card to somebody that she had hired, from an agency or, through a friend, with her code to the ATM card, and sent her off to get cash from the machine for her. There's no way she would have had her handle her billing, or added her to her checking account, or had her organize, and file the long-term care receipts that were so complicated. There are things that you need to name somebody as the responsible party, and those are usually reserved for like close family members, or trusted friends, and you really can't outsource that part of it. That's really just an intimate task that needs to be done by somebody close to you.
So let me ask you this question, because you have me thinking, because I haven't done anything and I'm in this space, and you'd think that I would, because I know it, right? And I've certainly worked with a number of families through the years, especially when it comes to healthcare proxies, and because I come from the medical care space. And so since I haven't done that, and I'm 72, I mean, when should people start to think about doing that kind of planning?
They should start when they're 18. So you've got
I've
a
heard
little
that
catching up to do. We've got an hour, Phyllis. We can get you all straightened out. So, there, when a person turns 18, they become a legal and financial adult. And when you are a legal and financial adult, other people, even your parents, cannot do things for you. There's just certain things that the financial world and the medical world, put a stop on, and it's a hard stop. If I wanted to go into my son, who is 19, his bank account, and or call up and say, hey, I need to remove $100 from my son's bank account, they wouldn't let me. That you
Right.
can't just do that. I tried to make him a doctor's appointment the other day, and they wouldn't even let me schedule a doctor's appointment for my
Wow.
19-year-old. They said, you're going to have a healthcare proxy for that. Now, I am who I, preach to be, right? And of course, I had a healthcare proxy for my 19-year-old, and I have a financial durable power of attorney that he has signed, naming me his financial actor. But, they're a pain in the neck to use. So, in that instance, I was like, kid, you're just going to have to call and make your own doctor's appointment. But that goes from the time you're 18 through most marriages. You can do things for a spouse, but not everything. And certain accounts are individual, particularly retirement accounts. And you might have assets that are yours only, and your spouse may have assets that are theirs only. And if your spouse has a bank account that you are not named on, even if you're the legal spouse, you cannot get into it. If your
Interesting.
spouse has a phone that you don't know the phone code to, you can't just demand to be let into the phone from the phone company if something happens to your spouse. There are just brick walls that you hit with the system if you need to do something in an emergency. And that goes, widows, divorcees, anybody. We're all just legally our own people. And I don't know that a lot of people understand that. They certainly don't understand it for 19-year-olds, because every kid goes off to college without a healthcare proxy or a durable power of attorney, except for my kid.
Right. Right. Well, I'm glad to know that we're speaking to somebody who walks the walk and talks the talk and walks the walk, right?
Exactly. But me, I'm a 54-year-old woman. I am divorced. You would not necessarily think, if you're in my position, that I am a legally a single person, and therefore nobody can act on my behalf, and I need to take care of some things. There are thousands of women in my position, thousands of men in my position, all across the country. There are 23 million of us, adults, single adults in the U.S. without, a spouse. And so all of those people are somewhat in danger if something would happen to them. So you have to name somebody that has like the spare key to your financial life in order to just prepare for, an emergency of some kind. And the reason that you do this, and this is what I try to get across in my book, it's not like a checklist item. It's not like, about taxes or being rich or wealthy or all that. What happens if you don't have those documents is that the people that you love who are trying to take care of you suffer. You're sick, you're in a hospital bed, you have dementia, whatever. You're really kind of out of it, and you don't know what's going on around you. And what's going on around you is that the people who are trying to keep your life going and salvage, your daily existence are having a hard time of it. Now, if you think about that ahead of time as a human being, you think, okay, I don't want anybody around me to suffer because of me or clean up my mess. I want them to have an easy time of it. And the only people who end up taking care of these tasks are ones who have had to do it for somebody else, and it was messy. So if you have ever had a parent die without a will, and you had to be the one to go to probate and sort everything out, you for sure have a will all buttoned up. Like, that's what drives people to do it.
It's interesting that you say that, because obviously as you're talking, my wheels are turning. So I have two things. One is I'm going for hip replacement surgery in a few weeks, about 2 weeks actually from today. And I didn't think about it before. Now, I'm not going to be under general anesthesia, but still I'm going to, have some kind of surgery and have some kind of anesthesia of some sort, right?
Right.
And so therefore I won't be, obviously up and functional for a while. And as you're saying it, I hadn't really thought of it, but I guess I should do something before this. I mean, it sounds ridiculous that I never even thought of such a thing.
Yes. So the good part is that now that you've been made aware, the little light bulbs are going off all around you. It's easy. You can do it in like 5 minutes. We could pause the show and you could do it and come back. If you had a commercial break coming up, you could do it during the commercial break. Like, it's that easy. You could open up your phone, open up an app. There are plenty of them out there. I don't because I'm a journalist. I don't
promote
anything.
Right.
I don't talk about specific services, but a quick internet search would find you very cheap or free legal services where you can download a power of attorney and a healthcare proxy. These are not very complicated forms. You couldn't do a trust this way very easily. A trust is a specific to location and your circumstances, and you really want a lawyer looking that over, or a specific a service that's designated to do that. But a healthcare proxy is really it's like a 1 to 2 page form most of the time that says, I, Phylis, designate this other human being, this is their name and address, to make healthcare decisions for me. And if you get a good service online, it will walk you through, the widget will walk you through a couple of questions. Do you want this person to make life and death decisions for you? Do you want to be on, are there specific things you want to say about, end of life measures if there should be an emergency? Do you want to be an organ donor? Little questions like that. And then it spits out a form. You take it to a notary, and then you hand it off to the person that you've named on that form. Now, for me, everybody knows me in my life as the responsible one, right? I'm the one that does everything and knows how to do everything, like my mother was. And so I'm that person for a lot of folks.
That's cool.
And I make sure that everybody who's going to name me as their healthcare proxy, you know, if the hospital's going to call me in an emergency, if I'm listed as anybody's person, call Beth in an emergency. I want them to have that form, because if they don't have that form, I can't help them.
Correct.
I can't do anything. They're going to call me, and all it's going to do is cause me grief and heartache.
Right.
And
so wait, I just want to interrupt for a minute, because
Yeah.
Jeanette says, as a caregiver, researching and estimating future care costs are so difficult not to deplete available assets too quickly. Suggestions. So I guess we should go into that, because that was the crux of but I'm glad that we talked about this, because like I said, it never even entered my mind. And actually, my daughter a few years ago said, don't you have anything in writing in case something happens to you? I mean, you work in this industry, you'd think you would. I said, oh, you're right. And that was the end of the conversation.
Yeah, so it's really easy to do. And, the healthcare proxy and the durable power of attorney are very similar. One's for healthcare decisions, one's for financial decisions.
So how would you address Jeanette's questions?
So there are a couple of really good sources of information. And here's where I will say one specific name. There is a landmark annual survey called the Genworth Cost of Care Survey. Genworth is a big insurance company, and they do a very well-regarded study every year that's been going on for many years. So they have a lot of data, and they report on the cost of various levels of care, averages across the country. And you can get a good estimate of, it's really good for visualizing the different levels of care available and the differences between them. And so, always staying at home is going to be the cheapest option.
Right, the least expensive.
But then you have to choose, if the person who's the caregiver at home can't cope with the person. Like dementia is a particularly hard illness to cover at home by yourself. It's a 24/7 disease.
Correct.
And one person cannot handle all of those shifts. It wears the caregiver down. Sometimes the caregiver ends up dying before the person who has dementia.
Right. There are statistics about that. That is evidence-based. That
is evidence-based. And all you have to do is, go to the news, and there's Gene Hackman.
Right.
Like nobody wants a Gene Hackman situation. So, if you're going to choose at home, then you have to further subdivide. Do you want a private home health aide where you just find somebody, and their cousin and their sister and their, friend from church? Or do you go through an agency? The private route will be cheaper than the agency route, but it's more of a hassle. It's not less secure, but you have to do all the tax forms yourself. Right. You have to, schedule all the people yourself. If one drops out, you have to find somebody else to be the replacement. It's a lot of hassle. That's how my mom did it. And that's the system I inherited, and I hated it.
Right. It is very difficult. And I just want to bring up something. I've talked about this before, that many years ago, there was I think it was on 60 Minutes. It's many, many years ago. So they had this like a retrospective. I think it was like 10 years. And it started out with this couple, and the woman was diagnosed with Alzheimer's, I think it was. And, he made a promise that he would never move her into any kind of care facility, and that he would always care for her. And then they went back 3 years later, and of course things started changing. And then they went back 2 years later, and then of course it was more difficult for her. And then they went back 2 years later, and then she was really incapacitated, and he was doing everything. And then I remember this, he said he felt like he wanted to end his life, because he, like you said, he didn't have a minute, not a second. Right. He couldn't even go out and walk the dog. And then a year or two later, they had a caregiver come into the house, and then she needed two caregivers. And then he finally did move her into a nursing home where she died 6 months later. And my advice about, to people always is, people have the best intentions, but those promises sometimes are difficult to keep. And there are, relationship pressures, societal pressures, religious pressures, cultural pressures, but it's not the easiest road. And where you start off, where it seems like it's going to be, is not where it's going to end up. And you're going to, I had that with my daughter and my ex-husband, because I remember years ago telling her, she said, well, maybe I should move Dad into the basement. I said, let me tell you something. That will not be a good idea, because I know it might seem like a great idea today or now, but I'm telling you, it's going to become untenable. And sure enough, she didn't do that, and it did. So now, J. Peter says, identifying and applying for grants, loans, or other financial assistance programs is an important part of long-term planning that most people do not consider sufficiently.
Absolutely. Although this is a very local answer, because the grants and loans and other financial assistance that will be available in your area are very state specific. This stuff, Medicaid and all of the programs associated with Medicaid, which is how most of these programs are administered, is very specific to how your state deals with Medicaid and administers Medicaid. And any outside nonprofit grants are also, typically local. There's no national program for these sorts of grants or loans that might give you money for your households. There are a lot of programs out there, pilot programs and whatnot, to pay a primary caregiver in the home who is a family member. The best of these actually come from the VA, but they're very hard to get. It's a lot of paperwork and a lot of rigmarole to get a family member assigned a stipend. The easiest state is California. So you have to know what's available in your area. And the one thing that is very uniform across the US is that every locality will have some sort of governmental office of aging.
Right. Area on aging. Correct. Yeah.
And they're called different things in different, whatever your county is, might call it something different, but the word aging is most likely to be in the title.
Right.
So go to your government website, search for aging, find the appropriate department, and then, search through what's available in your county. I know in my in-laws county, there's help for very specific things, like, we're in a cold place, so there's heat and energy assistance. There's roof repair assistance. There's even a service you can tap into to have somebody come and help you shovel your snow in a winter situation. Anything that you're eligible for in terms of religious societies you are part of, the Veterans Administration, if you're part of a union, there might be benefits. If you're part of a large company, there might be retiree benefits that you can tap into. You got to it's sort of like, when your kid is applying to college and you search around for like any affinity scholarship that they might like, my kid is left-handed. I want to see if I can get her a left-handed, college scholarship. It's kind
Are you for real? Is there such a thing?
There is such a thing. And so it's kind of the same way with aging. There's help for very specific sort of niche circumstances all over the place. Your Department on Aging will be a big clearinghouse of that. AARP and the National Council on Aging are also two big national sort of foundation type programs that can help connect you with services in the same way. I want to go back though for a second to the question before, which is about not depleting the available assets too quickly. And I want to say that the key bit of this, and this is where I come at this from a financial standpoint, and as a certified financial planner, the math that a regular person has to do in managing a care situation is a little bit too complicated for the average person. It is not addition and subtraction. It is addition at the same time as subtraction with multiple levels of equations on top of each other. And that's why it's hard to figure out. My mom used to get so anxious about all the money flying out the window. She had a nest egg of savings, like most people. And like most people, she was 76. That money is not going to, there's no more money coming to that pile, right? That's your pile. That's it. And watching it go from, this to this,
Right.
and for those of you just listening, a big pile down to zero. And people do spend down to zero. Like that happens to a lot of people. When you're watching it dwindle to zero, it's very nerve-wracking. It is, as one person described for me for the book, it's a ticking time bomb. And when you get a year out, 6 months out from zero, you start to panic. And the way you keep from depleting it is to focus on growing the part that can grow, as much as is safely possible, and at the same time managing your spending going down. And there are equations. If you go to financial planning software or you engage with somebody who can run that number for you, like I was able to run it for my mom. I put the equation in my book. It's too hard to describe verbally because it's an algebraic equation. But there are free calculators online, and there are resources for them in my book that you can plug in your numbers. You can say the typical scenario we get at MarketWatch is this. I get this letter like constantly, and mom always has like some pile of money. Like, mom has $250,000. Mom has $500,000. And that sounds like a lot. But if she has dementia, that's gonna dwindle fast. But mom has $500,000. She just got diagnosed with dementia. How long will the money last? And what do we do when it runs out? Like, I get this question nonstop. So I show you how to run the numbers. If you're spending $12,000 to $15,000 a month, and a person has $500,000, you might get like 3-4 years out of that. And I'm bad at remembering exact numbers, but like there's an equation for figuring out how long, because part of it's growing and part of it's depleting. So you have to do both of those equations at the same time. And so you figure out what time you have left. So I have 3 or 4 years. All right. Is mom gonna last 3 or 4 years? You got to be realistic about that. Like, it sounds terrible. But, when my mom was sick, we had no idea because she didn't have an actual diagnosis of anything. My mom was just sick. She had a surgery. She got complications after the surgery, infections, and the infections caused various imbalances. And so there was nothing anybody said like, you have cancer and she's got 6 months to live. Nobody ever said that. All they said was, nothing is actually wrong with her and she could just turn around and be fine. So we had no idea if we were planning for 6 months or 6 years or 20 years. Like, we had no idea. And so when we did the planning, when I did the planning, I looked at her pile of money and I said, okay, we have, here's how much cash we have on hand now. It was June when we were doing this. I said, we have enough cash at the rate we're spending to last us until August. Now, when it comes to August, we need to get money out of her, more money than she usually took out of her retirement accounts per year. We need to break into that principle and start taking more money out. I need an infusion of cash because I can't get from August to December when she usually took her money out, without breaking into it. So I had to call the financial guy and say, we need money in July. We need to arrange for money now so that we have money in August to pay for things, or else it's coming out of my pocket.
But, I just want, before you go on, since you mentioned this formula in the book, I think we should put a picture of the book up so people can see it and go to Amazon or wherever it is so they can order it, because, and there it is, My Mother's Money, and a guide to financial caregiving. And it's on Amazon, correct?
Yeah, it's on Amazon. It's on bookshop.org. It's on all the major booksellers. It's in all the bookstores. And I'll hold up the page. I don't know if you can see this little chart here, but this is
Uh-huh.
the chart you have to plug your numbers into, and the link is there for the calculator.
What page is that?
That is page 121.
Okay, cool beans. So on page 121, if you get the book, you'll see the chart to do the calculation for the money as you were just talking
Yeah.
about.
And then you have to make decisions like, okay, when you get to the end of the pile of money that's there might be a house, right? So then you got to make a decision. If we get 2 years out and mom is still there, mom is still needing care, then we got to sell the house.
Right.
And, and then the house money, then you do the equation on the house money. Then, you say you get $250,000 for the sale of the house. Then you get 2 more years.
Right.
And then you say, okay, when mom completely runs out of money, then we have to apply for Medicaid.
So I want to say something at that point, because it doesn't always go smoothly.
No.
I mean,
it certainly isn't going to go smoothly for the next couple of years.
But not only that, I'm even talking about when you said, if mom has a house and sell the house, because then there are family dynamics that come into the process, and it's not so easy. It's not just like a smooth ride. Okay, we're going to figure the money and this, that, and the other thing, and one person is in charge. But if there are multiple siblings, been there, done that. So Clarence says, I'm tasked with the role of caregiver and having to review and manage health insurance coverage, including Medicare and Medicaid, tracking medical bills, and filing insurance claims is overwhelming. Any ideas? Great question, Clarence.
Clarence, I feel you. I was in the same position. It's a hard job. Tried, for me, what worked was staying as organized as possible. Remembering my mission and my purpose. My purpose was to take care of my mom in the way that my mom would have taken care of herself. And so that was my guiding light, and that gave me the energy to carry on a lot of times when I just wanted to give up. And really, there's no, if you give up and some of the stuff doesn't get done, there's nobody else really that's going to pick up the slack. So, just keep track of it the best you can. Like, try to develop a system for ins and outs, maybe one afternoon per week that you schedule to look at stuff. But it's a lot. I apologize for the American system, but
I just want to say this about that. When you said come up with a plan and it's overwhelming, and give yourself some grace, and there's nothing wrong with saying, oh my God, I feel overwhelmed. I don't really want to do this anymore. I would say, don't beat yourself up or feel guilty about that, because that's a normal human emotion. And the weight of this is really overwhelming. And if whatever you can do for self-care, even if it's, 15 minutes, once a day in the morning or the evening, to do whatever you do to decompress, that will help you get through it. Because self-care is really key. I tell people, obviously, we've all heard you can't pour from an empty cup. And if you're totally depleted and overwhelmed, that's going to carry over into the situation. So now Keith is saying a CFP is not the only professional that is needed. A CFA, Certified Financial Analyst, is skilled at money management and portfolio analysis, similar to an MBA in econometrics. This was a great decision to maximize return and minimize risk. Portfolios with multiple time and risk characteristics is much more efficient than one portfolio.
I gotta say, I kind of disagree with Keith here. I don't know that a CFA is going to do you much good in this situation, because you're not talking about long term here. The whole point of financial caregiving is that your timeline, your time horizon has shrunk. My time horizon with my mom turned out to be 8 months. The CFA is looking at things that are 10 years, 30 years.
Long range.
They're trying to get you to 100. I was trying to get my mom to 67. I'm sorry, 76, 67. Um, I was trying to get my mom to 77. She was 76, and I didn't make it there. She got 2 months short of 77, and I missed the mark. So, and most CFAs I know are even less good at the practical stuff. So like the CFP was my mom, and the CFA was my English professor father, who couldn't unload the dishwasher and never knew what direction anything was.
You know,
They're academics.
I wanted to say something else about that, because like you said, you wanted to get your mom to 77. Now, I had somebody on the show a couple of months ago, Lori LeBay, who cared for her mother who was diagnosed with Alzheimer's, who lived for 30 years. So there's no predictability to this either.
Right.
And that's part of the challenge, that you don't really know.
Right. But you do need a team of professionals. I would suggest that you need a tax professional. An enrolled agent or a CPA would be extremely helpful in this circumstance. A geriatric care manager, if you're into hiring other people, a geriatric care manager could help with a lot of the bill paying, the bill management, the insurance stuff that the other caller was worried about. A social worker to help with placements.
Mm-hmm.
You know, these facilities that you may or may not want your parent to go into, or the home health aides, it's a competitive market. You can't just decide to go to these places and just sign up and go.
Correct.
So a social worker who has contacts is an extremely helpful person to have on board. A therapist, a bill paying service, a trust service.
Well, wait, let me interject. I think that's something that you just said that could be helpful to the caller before, the person before, who said about how overwhelming it is, right?
Yeah.
That you could hire a bill paying service. So at least that's one task, if you can do it, that's off your plate. And that's just being taken care of.
Yeah. So I would go with those and then a state lawyer, some kind of lawyer on the team. I would go with those people way ahead of a CFA. Although I love CFAs, and they are really highly qualified professionals. They are focused on an aspect of the financial management of this problem that's a little bit too academic for the practicalities involved.
Mm-hmm.
A CFA cannot help you fill out insurance forms.
Right. That makes sense. And I would agree with you that a CFA is really looking at more long-term. So it also depends when you start this.
Yeah.
So if you start this maybe when you're 40, so maybe the CFA would be the right person. But if you're starting this when, like you say, when you're 70, maybe that isn't the person, because that is not the kind of long range approach that really is going to benefit you. Not that you might not live to 100, who says no, but nobody does know. And you probably need something that's much more time bound, like 10 years or 15 years. I'm just conjecturing. Yeah. I mean, yeah. What would you say to that?
I would say that makes a lot of sense. And, I'm of the belief that anything you do with your finances, any investments you make are better than no investments. And so the particularities of fine tuning the investments to sort of maximize growth and all of that, I'm more about, the holistic aspects of it than the minutia. I'm not looking at a lot of graphs and looking for markers in the market and things like that, trying to predict and, get the, this ETF versus that ETF kind of financial planning. I don't get that specific. I do this more on a macro level to educate people. I'm more about like where you put the ETF than which ETF you pick.
So do you work with families or individuals? Because I'm thinking if people no, you don't do that at all.
No, I am strictly a journalist, and I have the certification to be a certified financial planner, but I don't manage anybody's money, and I don't take on individual clients. I
Okay.
just do it from a sort of broader perspective, explaining it to people, because the people who do this for a living are really good at what they do. They aren't necessarily so good at communicating it to a wide audience in a way that people can understand, in the
Hmm.
storytelling aspect of it, and putting it all together at the right time in the right way. And so my job as a journalist in this space is to get people's attention,
Hmm.
alert them to the fact that there's something that they need to know, and be at least eloquent enough to get them to listen to me for, or read me for 5 minutes to get
Hmm.
the point across. And
So
that's
besides your book, where is it? Besides your book, where else do you write? If people wanted to look up, things you've written, articles, how would they find you?
So I have a website. It's bethpinsker.com. I write a column 3 days a week. I'm a full-time columnist at marketwatch.com, which is a News Corp Dow Jones publication. So it's in the same family as Barron's and the Wall Street Journal. And prior to that, I was at Reuters, where I wrote a similar column and edited. So I've been doing this for quite some time, sort of breaking down financial concepts as they, appear in the news, and explaining them to people, what they need to know.
I have to say, the way you've just explained it, I mean, I've understood it better than, I've understood it in the past. So I have to say you're good at what you do, which is probably why you do it, right?
Well, thank you. I have two teenagers, and I've had to learn how. One of the ways I sort of hone my skills is explaining these really complicated financial topics to them in a way that makes them actually want to listen to me and not just roll their eyes.
Right.
So if I can get them to understand it and care about it, then I feel like I can do it for the rest of the universe too.
Interestingly enough, I don't think they teach enough of this in school,
They
actually. They
don't.
don't teach it at all. I don't, well, of course I went to school a gazillion years ago, but my feeling is they probably don't teach, money management or teach anything about this, especially in higher grades and, high school. That's my hunch. I could be wrong. I mean,
There
can
are little pockets here and there where they teach it. But it's not widespread, and it's not deep enough for really the knowledge that kids need, especially as they hit like 18. 18 in most places is when the bank account that your parents had for you rolls over to your jurisdiction
Mhm.
as an adult. So when my kid turned 18, he took control of his bank account, his savings account, his checking account, and his Roth IRA that I had set up for him.
Mhm.
What are you gonna just hand them a new grenade? Like, like, how do you hand over control of those sorts of things to 18-year-olds without,
Right.
explaining anything to them? So,
Well,
um,
I would say that most 18-year-olds or most families, I'm going to ask my daughter because I know I've heard that before, that if you should have a healthcare proxy once you turn 18. I have heard that before. Um, my oldest granddaughter is she'll be 12 in February, and I wonder. I'm going to ask my daughter if they've started to talk to her about certain things, money management, or she's
mhm,
not too young for that. She's in
not
middle
at all.
school, and to start to build on that education.
My son got his first little job at 14, um, paid in cash, and I opened a Roth IRA for minors for him, and he puts the earnings into the Roth IRA, because with the Roth IRA, you have to have earned income. So
Right,
it's not just for little kids. You can't just throw money in there
right,
as a
right.
parent. They actually have to earn it. And so both of my kids now have filed taxes the past couple of years and earned money, and I put that money in a Roth for them. When they are retired, that money, because it's gonna grow for 60 plus years, that's gonna be a significant amount of money. They are already way ahead of retirement than I was, at that age.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't think most of us, and my father was an accountant. He never taught me one dang on thing about any of it. I'm sorry to say. I'm just a fact. Of course, that was many years ago.
Yeah.
Times were different. But he never taught me anything about anything having to do with any of this. And his, I came from a whole mathematical family on my father's side. So somebody was a tax attorney. I had his older brother was a brilliant mathematician. I'm sure they knew about all. It wasn't discussed. I mean, I don't know if it was the times. Um,
I don't know.
I don't know if it
My
was.
mom discussed these things with me, but maybe I just had an affinity for it and I listened because I learned these things, and I don't think my brother paid any attention.
Mm-hmm.
So, one of the reason I think I became a financial journalist is because we were audited 3 times while I was growing up. And this
Mm,
became a very huge issue in our household. My mom was always tied up with the IRS. And I paid attention to that and listened to her. And I'm not so sure that my brother did or had any memory of how big an
mm.
issue this was for her because it just wasn't on his radar.
Right, right. Yeah, everybody has their level of interest. But I think, we talked about this a little before the program started, which is that people are so overwhelmed. And you started with this very well with the caregiving experience, the actual nuts and bolts of the caregiving, whether it's making meals or going shopping, doctor's appointments, and all of that, which is a lot. And I don't think, and people are so overwhelmed by that, and they're like, suffocating under it, right? They're
Mhm.
struggling and they're suffocating in stress. I don't think they talk so much with other people and find out about the financial aspects of or what other people are experiencing and getting support for themselves that way. Lacey says, when my son reached 17, he was present at meetings with our CFP. Oh, terrific. And we began discussing the value and the use of each account form, both from each account from both basics and the unknown. That's the hidden dimension. By 18, he understood the account's purposes, benefits, and management. Wow, kudos to you, Lacey. I
Yeah,
must
great
say.
job.
Yeah, absolutely. But how many people do you think do that?
I don't know, people have this thing about money. They don't want their kids to know how much money they have. They don't want them to know how much they make. I never knew how much my parents made my entire life. Like until I inherited after my mom died, I went and I found the box of every tax return they had ever filed since like my mom's first job in 1950 something when she worked at an ice cream fountain. Um, and so I started to go back through them because for the book I wanted to know when they both took Social Security, like what age were they when they took Social Security, because that is not something I knew because it
Right.
happened when I was younger. I wasn't a CFP then, and I wasn't paying any attention. And you would think that, given what I do for a living, you would have thought I would have asked that at some point, like when did you start taking Social Security? And I had no idea. So I had to go back through their tax records and see when the first Social Security statement started to show up. And so I saw how much they were making it at every point along the way.
Mhm.
And I had never known that was not information that we talked about in my family. And I don't think it's information that a lot of people talk about.
I think you're right. I remember many years ago, my daughter asked me what my income was. I told her that wasn't should be a concern of hers. I mean, now I don't know if that's because that's how I grew up, and you think you're not going to do the same things, but sometimes you do, or like you said, I don't think it's something that we readily discuss.
Yeah, and a lot of parents don't want to tell their kids how much money they have and how much that they might give to them as an inheritance. And the more I think about it, the more I experience it and talk to people, it seems like a very bad idea. One, because those gifts then don't happen until after the person dies.
Right,
And so if you die at 90 and your kids are then 70, um, you've passed the window where an inheritance is useful to them.
right,
You
right.
know, what if they needed that money when they were 40? You can do a lot more good with some of this money. Like if you are in the fortunate position that you will have excess money and there will be something left over after you die. There's this movement now among the billionaires, but it's trickling down to regular people that you should start giving away that money while you're still living.
Correct.
Not for any tax purpose, not for any purpose other than the joy it will bring to you as the person who gives the money to somebody else to help them, and the good it can do for that person at that point in their life, whether it's a child, a grandchild, or a charity.
Right. Warren Buffett I think it was Warren Buffett who started that, right?
Yeah. So that's not just for billionaires, that's for holiday money and birthday money and helping to pay for college and down payments on houses and all sorts of things like that can help somebody in real time in their life. You don't want to spoil them. You don't want to give away too much to make your position untenable. But if you know that there's extra money, if you know that you've saved well, then there's no reason to hold on to it and give it away after you've died.
I think I remember Warren Buffett once said that he gave his son or his kids, I don't remember. I know he has a son, but I don't remember how many other children he has. Let's say there's more than one, so I'll say them. He gave them enough that they could do something, but not enough that they should do nothing.
Right. So, for most people, that's not a danger.
Right, exactly.
We're not talking about, money that you're going to, go off to Paris and not do anything and draw cartoons or something. Not that that's not a worthwhile pursuit, but most people aren't talking about that kind of big money. For most people, at most, it's going to be help with a down payment on a house or college education for grandchildren. Right. And there's a lot that grandparents can do to help on that front, especially with college these days. Open up a 529, start putting money in there when the kid is born. And that becomes an enormous help, 18 years down the road.
What would you say about the difference between that and opening a trust?
For college, I would say the 529 is by far the best college planning vehicle out there.
And because
most states give a tax benefit for the contribution, so therefore you get an immediate benefit in the tax year. But then the principal grows tax free, and if you use it for college, you don't pay any tax on that money, ever again. So I saved for my kids in a 529 plan, and I'm using it now. So it's been very helpful to have that money set aside for my kids' college education, because I haven't had to take the money out of my daily cash flow in order to pay for college. I had saved money and it had grown well, It sat, I kept contributing money over 17 years. Now my kid is 19. We're spending it.
Right.
And then I still put money in because I get a tax deduction. I put money in by December 31st. And actually, no, the bill is due. So I have a bill due December 15th. Right. I will put money in December 1st and then take it right back out December 15th to pay the tuition. But I get a state tax deduction. So
I have another question going back to what you said earlier. What's the difference between a power of attorney and a durable power of attorney when we're talking about setting up some of these documents that we need to?
So they're just different names for the same thing. Power of attorney is just a general term. There are different kinds of powers of attorney, and I have a list of them in the book. But in general, a durable power of attorney is a document that you would have to sign and fill out once, and it would be good for a number of different circumstances. It would say, in the event of my incapacity, defined very broadly, I give these powers to this person. You can have different kinds of specific powers of attorney. Like, for instance, if you are selling a house and you don't want to go to the closing, you can give power of attorney to your lawyer at the closing, and they can. It very specifically is limited to that particular real estate transaction, and your lawyer can sign the closing documents for you. A lot of people don't like to go to real estate closings, and they have their lawyers do it for them.
Mm-hmm.
You can also have what's called a springing power of attorney, that in a specific circumstance happens. I don't know what it would be, but say you put in the documents, if I get in a car accident, then this person can act on my behalf. But if I don't get in a car accident, they have no powers.
Oh, okay. Makes sense. That makes sense.
But it has to be a springing happens on, something happens that you've specified, and the document springs into action.
Oh, well, that makes sense then. So, like I said, when you started talking about this, I think I better have this conversation with my daughter, and it shouldn't be while we're driving on the way to the hospital for my surgery.
Yes. These forms are easy to get. As I said, they will save you so much pain and heartache and mess on the other side of things, that it's just, all I'm trying to do is help people have a less hard time. Like, listen to my story and do the things I suggest doing, and the people who love you will have a less hard time taking care of you. It'll be easier for them. It'll be less expensive. And no matter how hard or onerous you think the task is, it's harder if you don't do it.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Well, Beth, I mean, this has been so terrific, for not only for helping us understand the financial aspects of caregiving from the vantage point of your journey with your mother, but caregiving, in general. Like we said, it's often discussed really just from the emotional, the psychological, and the physical toll it takes on the caregiver, but not so often from the financial point of view. So your insights, your knowledge, they're so helpful. And of course, I learned a lot during this conversation that I'll not only take into consideration for my own journey, but when I'm talking with other people based on our conversation So this has actually absolutely been just terrific. I'm tongue tied because I'm thinking, oh my God, I've got to talk to my daughter about this tomorrow. And she'll say, but I've been telling you to do this for years. She doesn't talk like that. I always do that caricature of her, but she will say something like that. But how long have I been telling you to do this? And as you know, it's like the cobbler who has no shoes. And I work in this industry and have for so many years and seen so much. Actually, this kind of started, I'll just say this, during COVID. So my specialty in this space was really working with people who were dependent on mechanical ventilation, who had trachs, and a specialist in respiratory care. And so during COVID, my daughter texted me once and said, well, would you ever want to go on a ventilator? And I said, of course, no. And she said, well, I thought you'd say that. And then she said, well, what if they said it was for just a short period of time? And I said, well, I have to think about it. And then we never had another discussion about it. COVID is in the rearview mirror now. And she brought it up once and said, well, did you ever decide to write anything? I said, no, I really haven't. But now I'm going to have to, because I'm going for surgery. So this couldn't have been more perfect. And actually, one of the reasons we talked about this, I know we only have another minute. One of the reasons I really wanted to have this conversation ahead of Thanksgiving is because a lot of people go home or are with family members they haven't seen for a while, and they see changes in them. And then they realize they're going to have to start to approach the conversation on these issues. And that was another reason why I thought it was so important to have this conversation ahead of the holiday season.
Absolutely. Everybody should be paying attention, looking for red flags, and then maybe not bringing them up all at once, little baby steps, but take note of what's going on. Just be an observer at first, and then start to hone in on the conversations.
Well, this was just been terrific. So thanks a lot, Beth. I really appreciate it.
BethPinsker.com if you want the book.
Okay, absolutely. I think everybody should go out and get it. I'm certainly going to, because obviously I need a lot to learn. So this has been absolutely terrific. So now for next week's guest, Sarah Gross is a politically engaged filmmaker, writer, and mother of 3 young adults. Her featured documentaries have been broadcast on public television internationally and shown in festivals around the globe. Having grown up in a multiracial family in the U.S., Sarah Gross has a deep personal connection to stories of racism, identity, and belonging. She has a dual nationality in the United States and Germany. Her featured documentary, Grains of Sand, which had a world premiere in March 2025, was nominated for many awards. It's a heartwarming story about 2 women who have become friends in their later years. It is based on a bird's eye view of women in her family and explores the depth and meaning of friendship and relationship. So remember to tune in, comment, and ask questions on November 26th at 7 p.m. Eastern Time on the Source TV radio network. And until then, take care, stay well, and stay tuned.
Go for it, go for it. I'm just saying I'm not finished yet. Search for it, swing for it. Discover the me that lives in yes. Stand for it, stretch for it. It's my time, imagine my best. Run for it, reach for it. Uncover the me that lives in yes. I know, yes I know. There'll be miracles wherever I go. It's not work, it's play. I can make